I received a question here. Let's see. How can we know if we have overcome subjectivism in adolescence and are ready to enter the sphere of high culture? And what advice would you give to overcome the stage of social integration and increase our intelligence in social relationships? Very good questions. Let's answer the second one, as it will contain the answer to the first. The first thing is to recognize that you want social integration. In other words, be honest with yourself. I am doing certain things because I want certain people to approve of me and like me. The moment you realize that you want people to like you, you will no longer confuse your motivations. That is, whatever you do to achieve this effect will be done consciously with that goal in mind. Then, you can clearly consider the problem of what behaviors you are willing to engage in to gain sympathy. Once you've learned, let's say, the set of mechanisms to win sympathy, you can also judge the use of these mechanisms in light of higher considerations. Do you understand? For example, something that inevitably wins sympathy, people noticing that you are interested in them. Ask them questions about themselves. Get them to talk about themselves. No one can resist that. Ask questions that, let's say, encourage people to talk about what they want to talk about. This is a very simple mechanism for winning sympathy. At the same time, it already has a moral sense embedded in it, because you cannot do this if you don't have genuine interest in the person, right? So you'll see the following. First, you want to win sympathy. To win sympathy, you need to show interest in people. But if you're only interested in them to win sympathy, you are not truly interested. Your focus isn't on them, but on yourself. Then it will fail. Practicing this will teach you to have genuine interest in people. In other words, you don't need to think about sympathy. Why? Sympathy is implicit. I will gain sympathy anyway. If I am truly interested in listening to the person, they will like me even if I'm not thinking about it. So why try to win sympathy if it's already built in? Do you understand? So the focus shifts from winning sympathy to genuine interest. Are you understanding? And it's like this with many other things. That is, the axis of conduct begins to shift. And then you'll see that the sympathy you want to gain is not worth the effort because it's very easy to obtain. For example, I have a theory. There is no such thing as unrequited love. I say this and people sometimes don't understand. Your love is unrequited when you're feeling sorry for yourself because that person hasn't paid attention to you. So you're mortally in love with yourself, taking care of yourself. Naturally, the woman won't care about you. If you truly love her, wish her well, wish her happiness and forget about yourself, she will love you no matter what. It's irresistible. So, the problem is not how to win the girl's love. No, the problem is how to truly love the girl. When you have that, it's irresistible. Unless it's a completely perverse and crazy person. Some people are like that. There are 2 or 3 like that. Be cautious with them. The kind of person who says, "Oh, you love me?" then you must not be worth anything. Such people deserve a kick and should be forgotten. That's the perverse one. But in general, with normal people, love is always reciprocated. Sometimes, it can't be reciprocated to the level you desire due to impossibilities. For example, if the woman is married to someone else and you're in love with her, what do you expect? She may love you, but that doesn't mean she'll go to bed with you. So, you learn to adapt. Say, "Look, we'll have this love for the rest of our lives, but we can't cross certain boundaries. That wouldn't be right." Wanting to win her at all costs in such a situation isn't true love, because you'd be wishing harm upon her. Look, love is something that comes with attraction, passion, and desire, combined with true kindness and generosity, to the point where one becomes indistinguishable from the other. Only then do you have love. Do you understand? So, if there's dualism, it's over. It won't work. For example, if you're in love with a girl, are you certain that marrying you is the best thing she could do for her life? Is there no one better for her than you? Are you sure about that? If you're not sure, with what right do you want this for her and still call it love? Are you trying to ruin her life? Now, if you think and say, no, truly, there's no one better than me. I am the best because I'm sincere. I genuinely like her. I am this, I am that, I am handsome. Then, you want this for her because you want her to be happy. So you won't approach her timidly because you know what you're offering is good. And if she doesn't want it, then she's foolish. Do you understand? Through high culture, my son, you will forget about yourself and take on greater concerns that encompass you and resolve the earlier ones. That's how the transition happens. So regarding the subjectivism of adolescence, you'll know when you realize that you have true love for a person, or for many people, not just in the sexual domain, evidently. And take note, if you have true love and that love is rejected, you won't feel depressed. You won't feel diminished. You'll pity the person. You'll think, what a fool. Here I am, offering something great, and she doesn't want it. She wants to ruin herself. So be it. I'm not here to waste time with an idiot. Do you understand? That is to say, as your concerns elevate, you'll lose that fear, that dread of not being accepted, of not being liked, because being liked is the easiest thing in the world, folks. Why waste so much time on such nonsense? You don't need to. Have genuine interest, have true love for people, and they will like you. And if they don't like you, you'll know for sure they are idiots. In short, gradually you'll detach yourself from the judgment of others as you gain certainty in your intentions. Understand? It's not that you'll disregard others' opinions. We should never disregard others' opinions. You simply don't need them because you already know what you're doing. And I think that answers both questions. Here's another question. For example, Philippe Delprat de Française. That's a noble name, isn't it? And now about martial arts. Which ones have you practiced? I've only practiced 2. I practiced Quimpu with João Brito for a while and later practiced Tai Chi with Michel. I stopped practicing Quimpu because I thought I was going crazy. He taught some really bizarre things. For example, he taught us to sleep on a stretched rope. If you couldn't manage to sleep, you'd obviously fall. But when you started snoring and woke up still hanging on the rope, you'd learned. He also made us run in circles and then said, now keep running in circles. Then he'd say, now take a step on the wall and increase the speed. Now 2 steps, now 3 steps. When you got to 5 steps on the wall, you'd think, I'm flying. And then I started thinking I had superpowers, and I told myself, look, I'm not capable of doing this because I'm going to go crazy. Some people can do all those things and still remain humble, but not me. I was being corrupted by the technique. I have the utmost admiration for João Brito. He's a great friend of mine and I adore him, but I won't train in that stuff. I practiced Tai Chi for a long time, and it did me a lot of good. I remember that throughout the time I practiced, I never caught a cold. Not once. I never had a cold, never had a sleepless night. And any situation that came up, let's say I focused on my abdomen. Later, when I faced extremely dangerous and nerve-wracking situations, those where people collapse and start crying for help, if not for Tai Chi, I would have done the same thing. But I stayed there, focused on my abdomen. The world could be falling apart around me and I wouldn't care. I learned so much from it. However, it's just my impression. I think Tai Chi attracts problems. You're kind of challenging the devil, and then the devil comes. So all these things have their dangers. But what do you think of capoeira? As a fight, it's useless. Your opponent will never give you enough space to perform those moves. There's an amazing video on the internet. It's a fight between a guy who looks Brazilian and another who looks like, I don't know, maybe German, something like that. So the Brazilian enters and starts showing off, doing flips, standing on his head, spinning his legs over his head, and so on. When he finishes all those movements, the other guy comes over, punches him, and knocks him out. So, now, it's beautiful to watch, and probably good for your health. It's an exercise, a dance fight, but as a real fight. Not at all. I want to learn French on my own. Very well, French is good for you to learn because the grammar is somewhat similar to Portuguese, up to a point. All right then. The first book I read in French was Le Nœud de Vipère, The Knot of Vipers, by François Mauriac. I suggest that same book because it's the kind of book you can't put down. You want to know what's going to happen. Got it? Now, the problem is that it's so engaging you'll be tempted to skip words and go to the next page. Don't do that. Restrain yourself. Hold back. If you skip ahead, you'll miss the best parts. Read it line by line and write down all the words you don't know. If you find yourself reading the same word again and thinking, "Oh, I knew it, but now I've forgotten," write it down again. Don't tell yourself, "Oh, I'll remember later." No, no, no. I would do this 20 times. Again, I'd forget the same word and get angry at my stupidity, but I'd write it down again. By the time I finished the book, I knew French. And so you'll develop a deep intimacy with the text. I think it's the best way. How much should one sleep to wake up ready to study? As much as you can. The more you sleep, the better for studying. Bruno Tolentino, for example, had this habit. Sometimes he would sit down to work and would work for 20 hours straight without getting tired. It was impressive. But he would sometimes sleep 16 hours a day. And that was one of the secrets to him lasting so long after being sick for 20 years. Look, everything should be done lightly. When you wake up and you feel like staying asleep, go back to sleep. There will come a time when that will stop. Meaning, if you follow, let's say, the natural inclination of your body, you'll do things properly. However, there's no point in doing this if you simultaneously carry anxiety, charging yourself with responsibilities, saying, "Oh, I should have done this or that." That's useless. The issue is not how many hours you sleep. The issue is this: when it's time to sleep, you sleep. When it's time to study, you study. You can't stay in a half-and-half state, although the natural tendency is to remain in such a middle ground. Understand this: the time you spend sleeping and dreaming isn't wasted. Sometimes, a dream can be more valuable than reading 10 books. If you sincerely wish to gain knowledge, to better understand the world you're in, if this is what you desire, it's because your nature, your heart, wants this. Nobody is pressuring you. I'm certainly not pressuring you. I'm not pressuring you because there's no need. I know the effect this course will have on you. I know it will work. So there's no need to squeeze you. I know you'll get there. That's why I ask for just one thing. Stay 5 years and practice what I'll instruct you to practice. Just that. If you do these 2 things, it's guaranteed to work. If you measure your IQ before and after this course, you'll see the difference it makes. So go ahead. Don't do it with effort. No, no, no. Do it with sincere listening. Sincerity is what matters. Not effort, but sincerity. Xuan said this about motivation. The issue of motivation is like this. If a bull is running after you to gore you, you don't need motivation to start running. It's all about reacting according to the real situation. Another question. How do you harmonize your diet? Well, it varies from person to person, right? I've never had any strict criteria for this. There are days when I go the entire day without eating and don't feel hungry. Other days, I feel like eating all day long. That's just how life is. There really isn't a rhythm. The key to it all is genuine interest. You'll only do what you're genuinely interested in. So tell yourself what you truly want to do. If you're doing one thing but want to do another, soon enough, you'll abandon the first. It's like the old Latin saying, age quod agis, meaning do what you are doing. If you can't focus on one thing and keep thinking about another, just do the other thing. This is about concentration, about not dividing your energy. Now, what determines the flow of our energy isn't our conscious intentions or duties. It's real interest. Imagination follows desire, and action follows imagination. Is that clear then? There's no point in forcing yourself too much. Now, I want you to develop an interest in high culture and to pursue it. I say, do you need to force yourself to do this? I say no. Follow these lessons here, and you'll see that your desire for high culture will become truly obsessive. Just listen to what I'm saying, and it'll work. So there's no need to force anything at all. Now, if after hearing everything I've said here, you still don't feel interested, it's because you're truly a fool, and there's no help for you. But that won't happen to any of you. Fernando Soneghetti Pacheco. I'd like to know your opinion about the writer and philosopher Ayn Rand. Congratulations on your work. Thank you. Well, Ayn Rand is the following. Ayn Rand is an excellent novelist. She wrote enormously powerful passages, that's for sure. But the problem is that she thought she was much more majestic and genius-like than she actually was. She even thought she was a philosopher with what she called the ethics of selfishness. It is neither a philosophy nor an ethics, not in any sense. It's a self-help system for remorseful capitalists. If you know any of those capitalists who constantly feel they're exploiting the proletariat, who feel guilty about it, and every time the Democrats blackmail them, they donate a bunch of money, give them Ayn Rand's books, they'll be cured. It'll teach them that their altruistic concerns are completely misplaced, that they are actually malevolent, and that what they call their selfishness is, in reality, what makes them truly productive. For some people, this works incredibly well. For others, not so much. So, it was made by someone and designed for a specific audience. It's a self-help system for guilty capitalists. If you're not a capitalist and you're not feeling guilty, forget Ayn Rand. First of all, the basic notion of selfishness and altruism. Selfishness and altruism are not philosophically valid concepts. They are not real distinctions. In any human action, it is practically impossible to separate one from the other because it's a matter of perspective. The problem isn't, let's say, what we call selfishness, meaning I want good things for myself. The problem arises when I don't care about anyone. For example, if someone wants to provide a good situation for their family, and as a result, they don't care about anyone else, would you call them selfish? Now, if they don't even want good for their family and care only about their own exclusive benefit, I say, how is that even possible? This person will end up alone. They don't want to share anything with anyone, so they can't even have sex. Why? Because having sex might benefit the woman, and they don't want that. They don't want to give her pleasure. It has to be only for them. That's an extreme and nonsensical situation. Therefore, no human action can be explained entirely in terms of selfishness and altruism. Both elements exist in a mixed form because they are not substantive things, but viewpoints through which you judge an action. The mere fact that she couldn't grasp this distinction and understood selfishness substantively shows that her philosophical training is deficient. Bruno asks, I remember in one of your classes you mentioned the necrological exercise, that the necrological exercise would help us find purpose in who we are and what we do, and that we should be specific enough to understand our purpose for the year or even for the day and moment. I feel that delving into the necrological exercise makes it hard to include so many details because the format doesn't allow for it. No, you create another necrological exercise. Don't add a lot of things to one. You make another, and another, and another, always trying to be concise. Forget the previous one and make another. You can even keep a collection. Then you'll see how, over time, you've clarified your values, criteria, and goals to yourself. Once I consulted a coach, a person who guides you in your professional practice, giving tips, etc. There was a woman, a Brazilian Jewish woman who lives here in Florida for a long time. I had some consultations with her and she said, first, you need to write a statement of purpose. I thought, wow, that's it. I've never done that. What do I want? Where do you want to go? What's your goal? That statement of my life proposal clarified so much for me. I will never be grateful enough to her for giving me that tip, even if it were the only tip she gave, though she gave several. Write something, a statement of your life purpose that could even be published, that you can take ownership of. From time to time, you can review your statement of purpose, your assertion of goals. It's an exercise somewhat like the necrological one, but don't do it yet. Stick to the necrological one for now. Later, I'll ask for one of these statements. Rolls and Moonies, you've mentioned a book title several times in which the author recounts experiences that led Plato to conceive of the world of ideas. Could you please repeat that information? The author's name is Paul Friedlander, Friedla umlaut N-D-E-R, Friedlander. The book is simply titled Plato, and I think there's an edition in the Bollingen series, and I think it's the only edition available. But this book, we will translate it. We will publish it here, one way or another. This book is indispensable, so don't rush, because soon enough we'll start publishing books here. We'll release them by subscription. You will make this possible. I'll ask for advance subscription so that we can guarantee a certain number of copies will necessarily be sold, ensuring the print run. And one of the books on the list is certainly Paul Friedlander's. Don't go around telling anyone about this. Luis Guilherme Pereira. Narciso Irala recommends sleeping 5 to 7 hours a day because it allows for dreaming while also ensuring adequate rest and making the most of the day. Do you think this is more suitable for people with civil obligations, jobs, etc.? Look, I've already spoken about sleep, and I think it's good to sleep a lot. I don't sleep as much as I'd like, but why don't I sleep? Because it's impossible for me. People want me to work. What a pain. But if I could, I'd sleep even more. Before going to sleep, pray. Ask God to give you a deep sleep with dreams that do you good. Even if you don't remember the dream, let it do you good. And another thing, 99% of intellectual and practical sterility comes from people not paying enough attention to their inner world, their world of imaginations, dreams, and desires. They despise this world. I say, wait a minute, this is you. That inner world is you. It's your set of resources. These are your strengths. If you don't pay attention to it, if you don't nourish it, your actions won't work because you'll be weak. If you only pay attention to what you have to do, responding only to external appeals, and neglect this, you strengthen the external world while weakening yourself. So for instance, dreams and daydreams. People think, oh, you can't waste time with idle thoughts. How so? Daydreaming. Thinking about things you like, things you find beautiful, recalling beautiful places you've been, beautiful people you've met, or beautiful things you want to create. That's absolutely essential. That's your world. So please, show yourself some respect. Pay attention to it. This will gradually reveal who you really are and what you truly want. This is absolutely essential. So much so that when you sleep, you dream. That is, if you don't want to pay attention to your inner world during the day, you'll have to pay attention at night. But you can also do a little during the day. Sometimes I have recurring images, for example, certain imaginary places. I've always had them. I don't know if those places exist. I remember looking at a certain landscape. No, it wasn't a landscape. It was a garden, very well organized and all that. And for some reason, I associated it with Finland. I don't know where this came from. To this day, I don't know. Then one day, after many years, I thought, wait a minute, let me look up gardens in Finland. And wouldn't you know it? They were similar. I don't know where I got that from. I remember when I was little, my brother received a set of books from my father, which contained photographs of Europe's major capitals. They were small books with black and white photos, but very well done. We would spend the whole day looking at those pictures. They were incredibly beautiful places. And to this day, they feed my imagination. The first effect they had was to make me look at them and then glance around. realizing something was wrong with the physical environment we were in. I thought, wait, life can't just be this. When I moved here to the United States and saw how, for instance, small-town architecture was so harmonious, so neatly done, humble yet very charming, I thought, this is fundamental. If people in Brazil cared a little more about beauty and less about money, they'd end up having more money. Why? Because beauty makes people stronger. And if they are stronger, more capable, more harmonious, they'll produce better things. Right? In so-called Brazilian culture, there's a contempt for beauty. Beauty is food for the soul, and above all, the beauty of what you imagine. This is much more important than exterior practicality. Why? Because with exterior practicality, you're expending energy to achieve external results. But I ask, where will you get that energy from? Energy comes from motivation. Motivation comes from desire. And desire stems from imagination. It's through what you imagine that you create the poles of desire, and then you pursue them. So, make an effort to imagine things. Imagine them clearly, vividly. This is very important. So, if you need to sleep 9 or 10 hours a day, do it. Some people manage with less. Another question. What do you recommend in Italian literature? My goodness, there's so much, so much. So much. For me, Italian literature boils down to two names, Dante and Manzoni, first and foremost. But it's such an immensely rich literature that you can nourish yourself on it for the rest of your life. Dante, for example, is someone to read and reread. Go back, imagine, work on it. You might even try translating parts of it yourself. I translated the first canto of the Divine Comedy, and it was incredibly rewarding. But those two authors are indispensable. And Italian philosophy is very rich too. It can certainly be used in the same way as French philosophy. It's just that the spelling of Italian words, in my opinion, is more complicated than French. You can recognize French words more easily than Italian ones. That's just my impression. Moreno Garcia asks, what exactly does the figure of speech, "Don't worry about the destination but enjoy the journey" mean? Look, obviously the destination is part of the journey. If you're not going from one place to another, you can't even call it a journey. You're not going anywhere. Whenever you're moving, there's an objective. Why? Because you know you're going to die. If someone says, "Oh, we need to enjoy every moment," listen carefully. That phrase doesn't make sense. First, there are no atomistic moments. A moment is part of a flow, and it's going somewhere. The notion of an ultimate objective, well, in the end, that's the final judgment. Meaning, who will you be before God? What is your final form? Isn't that it? We're always thinking about this. Now, the idea of living in the moment is, of course, something that could only have emerged in Western culture after its dualistic rupture, where people began to treat abstract concepts as though they were real things. Moment, my friend, is a completely abstract concept. And another thing, a moment, in quotes, is composed of several different moments. Why? Because you live simultaneously in various timelines. For example, one is the timeline of immediate sensory perception, where everything is intermittent and fragmented. One thing ends, another starts. But you wouldn't say your biographical time is like that, or that the timeline of your social economic existence is the same. These are different timelines, and you experience all of them simultaneously at every moment. So this notion of atomistic moments doesn't exist. It's just that we know we can think of things this way, but we can't make them be this way. Human life has a very clear structure. It's heading somewhere. Everyone wants something, even children, because if you were only to think about the present moment, you wouldn't move forward. Why? Because the moment, let's say, is your current action. But isn't there a subsequent action? If there isn't a subsequent action, then there's no next step either. This abstract concept creates a fetishized abstraction that hypnotizes people. You know those kung fu movies where they say, your problem is you're always thinking about the future and never living in the present. That's stupidity. Please stop. That's fake Oriental culture, the worst kind. Paulo Camargo. In your classes, you often talk about the habit people have of being mere repeaters of phrases without even knowing what they're talking about. In this context, what do you think about the new communication platform on the internet called Twitter, where only phrases with a limited number of words can be posted? All right, those wisdom quotes that girls used to write in diaries. When I was young, girls loved diaries. You had to write wisdom quotes in them. Those quotes, my friend, are up to you to fill with meaning. They can be full of meaning, they can be great things, or they can be nothing at all. Now you can try this exercise with one of those quotes, the same exercise I suggested for books. Take a quote and immerse yourself in it. Suppose the world really is exactly as the quote says. Let its various layers of meaning emerge, including those that are contradictory. Once you have a sufficient number of tension points, you'll start to understand the quote. Then, it's no longer an empty phrase or mere repetition. It's not the length of the phrase, whether short or long, that determines this. It's what you understand from it.